Just this past April, farm bankruptcies surged to their highest monthly total since early 2020 in President Trump's first term. Farmers began 2026 hoping for a course correction. And what has this administration done? Start a war with Iran.
Angie Craig came prepared to unload on Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins. She accused the Trump administration of abandoning farmers, cutting food assistance, and celebrating a so-called golden age that struggling Americans simply aren't seeing. Then Craig delivered her bluntest verdict yet. Honestly, it's disgusting.
Mr. Chairman, I want to start by saying that former Chairman Scott, the empty seat next to me, was a true fighter for hungry veterans in his district, for students of historically black 1890s land-grant institutions, hoping to become the next generation of agriculture leaders, and for family farmers. That is exactly why the issues facing farm country today require a serious approach. We owe Congressman Scott that much. Madam Secretary, welcome. Almost a year ago to the day, you appeared before this committee for the first time. During that hearing, Republicans and Democrats voiced their concerns about the pressing issues of the day facing farm country and rural communities. Even then, we discussed input costs, commodities prices, tariffs, food assistance programs, and USDA's important role in addressing all of these issues and more. I left that hearing hoping that you would heed the advice of this committee and chart a course for your agency that met the needs of working families and family farmers. Instead, what we have witnessed is blind loyalty to a reckless president and administration. Over this past year, you and this administration have failed farmers and working Americans time after time after time. Let's recap your record since you were last here. President Trump doubled down on his reckless tariff agenda, destroying critical export markets and driving up costs for all Americans. It cost farmers an estimated $15 billion in lost sales to China last year alone. While American farmers were reeling from the fallout of these tariffs and calling on the administration for relief, President Trump instead gave Argentina $20 billion and handed their ranchers a sweetheart deal, allowing more beef to be imported at the expense of American cattlemen. It's truly stunning. When you finally did listen to the pleas from farm country for relief, it was woefully inadequate, picking winners and losers by providing some farmers with only a fraction of the relief they needed, particularly specialty crop growers, sugar beet farmers, and foresters. Only 6% of farmers reported that their financial situation improved from last year. 6%. Madam Secretary, I'm embarrassed for you. Farm bankruptcies surged 46% nationwide in Trump's first year back in office, an astounding 70% in the Midwest. And just this past April, farm bankruptcies surged to their highest monthly total since early 2020 in President Trump's first term. Farmers began 2026 hoping for a course correction. And what has this administration done? Start a war with Iran with no strategy, forethought, or care for what the consequences would be for American agriculture or working people. As a result, critical supplies have been choked off from leaving the Strait of Hormuz, driving fertilizer and diesel costs to staggering new levels and making it nearly impossible for farmers to turn a profit. And while all of this is happening, what have you, as Secretary, been doing? Proclaiming that the golden age of agriculture is just around the corner for over a year now. I can promise you that corner is so long, no farmer in America can see around it. And mind you, this is just talking about farm country. You've also made the largest cut to food assistance in the history of our country, at a time when more and more people are struggling to afford their food. Then you went on TV and bragged about kicking over 4 million Americans off food assistance. People like Joseph Myers from my home state of Minnesota. He's a former farmhand who is going to lose SNAP benefits because of the new so-called One Big Beautiful Bill. In his words, quote, "When the food stamps come to an end, then it's going to be really suffering." He's 58, can't perform physical labor anymore, and works at the local food bank about 10 hours a week. But Republicans decided that's not enough for him to deserve SNAP benefits. And over the last year, I've watched you brag about taking food away from millions of Americans like Mr. Myers. You've put on some big show about this golden age in agriculture. Honestly, it's disgusting. The only person this has been a golden age for is the president himself. A personal $1.8 billion slush fund paid for by the American taxpayer. A ballroom custom built for his fancy dinners paid for by corporate donors. Putting his face on a $250 bill, building arches, carving his name into buildings, and that doesn't even include his crypto or shoddy cell phone business interests. A farmer in Iowa put it better than I could, so I will close with his words. Quote, "People are hurting out here. The rhetoric about the golden age of agriculture right around the corner, that doesn't match the reality of what's going on the ground at all. I wish I thought you would listen, but unfortunately, I do believe at this point that you are just another Trump acolyte, and I'm calling you out for it." Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Representative Angie Craig delivered a blistering opening statement against Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins, arguing that the Trump administration's agricultural policies have left farmers and working families worse off. Craig began by honoring the late Congressman Scott, emphasizing his work on behalf of hungry veterans, agricultural education, and family farmers. She used that as a contrast for what she said the committee should be discussing: the real economic problems facing rural America. Craig then turned directly to Rollins. She reminded the secretary that when Rollins appeared before the committee nearly a year earlier, lawmakers from both parties had raised concerns about input costs, commodity prices, tariffs, food assistance, and the future of American agriculture. According to Craig, the administration failed to address those concerns. Instead, she accused Rollins of showing what she called blind loyalty to President Trump while farmers continued to struggle. One of Craig's biggest targets was the administration's tariff policy. She argued that Trump's tariffs had damaged important export markets and cited an estimated $15 billion in lost agricultural sales to China. She then criticized the administration's decision to provide financial support to Argentina while allowing additional beef imports, arguing that American cattle producers were being put at a disadvantage. Craig's argument was simple: American farmers were asking for help while the administration's policies were making their situation harder. She then highlighted the lack of improvement among farmers, stating that only 6% of farmers surveyed reported that their financial situation had improved. Craig followed that with another troubling statistic. She said farm bankruptcies had surged nationwide and were even higher in the Midwest. For Craig, those numbers directly contradicted Rollins' repeated messaging about a coming golden age of agriculture. And that phrase became one of the central themes of the confrontation. Craig sarcastically told Rollins that the corner where this supposed golden age was waiting was so far away that no farmer in America can see around it. She then expanded the criticism beyond agriculture. Craig attacked the administration's cuts to food assistance, arguing that millions of Americans were struggling to afford food while the government was reducing access to SNAP benefits. She personalized the argument by discussing Joseph Myers, a Minnesota man and former farm worker who Craig said could lose his SNAP benefits under the new legislation. Craig's point was that agricultural policy isn't just about farmers. It also affects the people buying food, families struggling to pay grocery bills, and Americans who depend on food assistance to survive. Then came one of the sharpest moments of her opening statement. Craig said she had watched Rollins repeatedly promote the administration's golden age message while Americans were experiencing something very different. "Honestly, it's disgusting," Craig declared. She argued that the real beneficiary of the administration's policies was President Trump himself, before launching into criticism of his personal business interests and spending. Finally, Craig returned to the perspective of farmers themselves. She quoted an Iowa farmer who said that the rhetoric about an agricultural golden age simply didn't match what farmers were experiencing on the ground. And Craig ended with perhaps her most direct accusation of the entire exchange. "I do believe at this point that you are just another Trump acolyte, and I'm calling you out for it." That closing line made the broader message unmistakable. Craig wasn't simply criticizing one USDA policy. She was arguing that the administration's economic messaging about agriculture is disconnected from the reality facing farmers and working families. For your audience, the strongest angle is the contrast between the administration's golden age messaging and the economic hardship Craig says farmers and families are actually experiencing.